till now, over 6,000 members have participated in these webinars, and the feedback from our membership was very much encouraging for us. So, as you are aware, the webinar we are going to have today will focus and deliberate on the topic of stakeholder engagement. Let me take a couple of minutes to introduce our speaker. Ms. Shagufta Kamran coordinates the CSR working group at the CII ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, which is a group of enlightened sustainability / CSR practitioners from companies. She has developed the stakeholder engagement, the how-to guide. It comprises the explanations of various stages along with examples from Indian companies and other relevant study material. Shagufta has trained over 100 sustainability practitioners until now from leading Indian companies on effective stakeholder engagement practices. Before joining CII, she worked with Azim Premji Foundation to bring about systemic changes in the primary education sector of India. May I request all participants to make a note that this particular webinar would be a one-way communication from CII headquarters at New Delhi. The live interactive session would begin after the presentation of Ms. Kamran. Participants are requested to type their questions in the question box, which would be opened during the Q&A session, and Ms. Shagufta Kamran would take them all live one by one and she would answer all of them. May I, on behalf of all participants, would extend a formal welcome to Ms. Shagufta Kamran and invite her to take over the session. Over to Ms. Shagufta.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. As he said, I'm Shagufta Kamran from the CII ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. The presentation for the day today, I'll just quickly walk you through the agenda that we are going to be looking at. What we're going to be doing today, I'll briefly introduce the CII ITC Center of Excellence in terms of what are the kind of things that we do. We are going to focus upon the topic, which is understanding stakeholder engagement. Here we are going to be dwelling upon basic concepts. What are the global as well as national frameworks available to look at stakeholder engagement? The next part of my presentation will talk about the process of stakeholder engagement that a company should follow. And the last part of the presentation will be open to all of you for any questions or comments that you might have. So I'll start with introducing the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. As the title suggests, we are trying to, as an organization, raise the bar in sustainable business excellence by the organizations in the country. So our activities are essentially guided by these four quadrants that you see. So the first is we of course advocate for what is responsible and sustainable business practices. We also have programs aimed at recognition, which is the second part of the circle that you see. Recognition here, what we try and do is look at some of the best practices that emanate from the Indian industry and actually see how they can be best dealt with, and in terms of scalability as well as replicability for the other organizations. The third part that we essentially focus upon is capacity building. We do series of training programs as well as consultancy. I'll talk a little about that in some time from now. And the last part is thought leadership, wherein we actually come out with various publications as well as thought pieces which will encourage some sort of leadership as well as thinking within the organization on what are the kind of elements that are required to foster sustainability in the country. Our strategy is clearly twofold. One is really build the Indian brand when it comes to sustainability. We want the country to be seen as leading sustainability within the entire global scenario. And we do that through various things such as the Sustainability Awards, which is one of our major programs wherein we try and recognize the most sustainable organizations within the country. The other is in areas of innovation. We encourage a lot of thought leadership around innovation. We want companies to innovate, be it in terms of the kind of business models that they are looking at, as well as product innovation. And of course, we have a range of sustainability services, which is in terms of the trainings, programs that we look at. And the next strategy that we essentially follow is in terms of creating intellectual property, wherein we are trying to actually showcase and highlight the Indian practices and perspectives and articulate them to, so to speak, of an Indian model which could be replicated for the rest of the world as well. So coming to the first major thing that the center does, it is the CII ITC Sustainability Awards. The awards have been in existence for the past 6 years. I'll just briefly give you a snapshot in terms of the last year's performance. We had 16 companies which were awarded on various dimensions of sustainability in terms of were recognized for their performance. And the logos that you see on the other end are the companies that were really identified at various levels. And over the past 6 years, we've had 88 companies from the Indian country who have been recognized for doing sustainable business practices. The other major program that we do, this is our annual flagship event. It is called the Sustainability Solutions Summit and Exhibition. This year, this program is being organized in Delhi on the 15th and 16th of October. And some of the themes that we've earlier looked at during such flagship events have been sustainable and inclusive innovation, biodiversity, corporate governance, seeing the areas of partnership between areas such as India and Africa and other such unique options. In terms of sustainability service provider, ours is the largest service provider when it comes to sustainability services. Some of the areas that we provide a lot of services include sustainability reporting, which is based on the GRI model, sustainability assurance, stakeholder engagement, and this webinar is also a part of one of those services on stakeholder engagement. How do companies go about business model innovation? We have various programs around environmental legislation. We also have publications to support these kind of services. And of course, the management systems in terms of EHS, OSHAs, and various other such management systems. On the other end that you see are the kind of statistics that we look at while we do training. So in the last 1 year, that's the kind of numbers that we've reached. We've already trained more than 1,900 people. And you can see the kind of mandates and our location spread, the kind of countries that we are also reaching out to. The other major event that we do is our Business Leaders Program. This is really a top executive leadership level program, and Professor Stuart L. Hart is the lead faculty member for this program. And we have various other members such as Mr. Deveshwar, Mr. Ratata, who have also spent some time during the program to actually have discussions with various leaders from various organizations on how can they actually build their sustainability portfolio and run it forward. So these are the kind of panelists that we've had for this program. And this year this is happening from 29th November to the 2nd of December. And as I said, this is meant for the leaders in terms of the organization, people who are really at the level of decision making and in terms of further on, implementing the programs as well. Just to give you a snapshot of the statistics, that's the kind of representation that we've had. We've had business heads, which is about 35%. The other is functional heads, which is around 69%. And at managerial level, we have about 47% of the entire program. The other major program that we've done is the development of green public procurement guidelines for the Ministry of Environment and Forests. This is something that we'll be seeing in course of time to come out, and it's currently being reviewed by the ministry, so we see this coming out very soon in the few months to come. The kind of products that have been looked at while developing these specifications have also been highlighted, and along with that we've also offered suggestions around what should be the legislative framework for green public procurement. The other major project that we are a part of is the Sustainable and Inclusive Innovation, which we often refer to as the SI2 within the center. This is a project in partnership with the GIZ, and under this program we are doing an executive development program which is with Professor Ramaswamy from the Ross School of Business. And this is again a program meant for the CEOs as well as CXOs who are going to actually develop sustainable strategies and then see how they can be implemented best within their organizations. We also do a lot of work. I'm sure you're all familiar with the National Voluntary Guidelines that were released by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And we've been doing a lot of work, as Mr. Rao pointed out in my introduction, that I lead this practitioners-led group called the CSR Working Group. So we've been actually developing this implementation guidance, that how do companies implement the National Voluntary Guidelines if they were to do that, with the companies bill now coming into picture, and also with the SEBI guidelines suggesting that yes, top 100 companies would have to report around the NVGs. We've actually developed comprehensive guidance on how do companies do that. And we also offer in-company training programs on the National Voluntary Guidelines, which is open to all our members as well as non-members. So anyone who's willing to utilize this opportunity to understand how to implement the NVGs can also get in touch with us. And now coming to the program that we are talking about here is the CII ITC Center of Excellence, the Stakeholder Engagement Training Program. The training program is aimed at introducing practical approaches of how do you engage with your stakeholders. As I said, it is open to all, but essentially we've had participants from top, senior as well as middle level management who are really involved in the design as well as implementation of these programs. If there is a need, we also offer specialized in-company programs. We've already done such programs for technology giants such as GE, and we are already in talks with various companies who are also taking the services of our specialized programs. As the data suggests, we've already trained more than 100 practitioners during the course of the last 1 year. And the training programs for this year, we already had one in New Delhi on the 18th of May. And the next training program is scheduled for the 27th of September in Bhubaneswar. For those of you who are interested, could directly get in touch with me for registration or any other inquiries that you may have. Alright, so now we get on to the topic of the day, which is really the stakeholder engagement. So as I had pointed out earlier, I'll be first introducing the concept of stakeholder engagement and then walking you through the process of stakeholder engagement. As Mr. Rao suggested, I would request you to reserve your questions till the end so that I'm able to answer them in a more appropriate and better manner, and I'll be able to take note of all of them. So just to give you an overview on stakeholder engagement, it is definitely a part of mainstream business practices. It is not something which is going to be a peripheral activity that you can decide to sort of do at an ad hoc or at a one-off sort of a basis. It will have to be built into processes in a consistent and continuous manner. It helps in terms of improving communication with a wide range of stakeholder groups. It of course has a lot of reputational advantages, and of course it helps in ensuring sustainable development. So when we look at stakeholders, who really are these stakeholders? How do we define them? What are the kind of frameworks that are available? So when we look at stakeholder engagement, we have three most commonly looked at frameworks. The first is the Accountability 1000 SES, which is the international standard on stakeholder engagement. The other is a definition proposed by the organization called Accountability, which has been doing a lot of work around stakeholder engagement. And the third is, of course, the International Finance Corporation, which also lays down guidelines and principles on how do companies engage with their stakeholder groups. So just to look at some of the key terms that one needs to note while looking at or defining stakeholders, They are essentially people who could affect or could be affected by your organization in terms of the products or the services that you offer. In terms of, they could be people who are actually may have an interest in your organization. I would also like to draw your attention to one thing over here, that the International Finance Corporation looks at stakeholder engagement only from the point of view of projects. So they look at stakeholder engagement as the commissioning of a project till the time you close the project. It is, so the definitions are also restricted to that level. Whereas the accountability stakeholder engagement standard looks at the entire concept in a more comprehensive as well as a more broad perspective. So now that we know who stakeholders are in terms of their definitions, so what is really stakeholder engagement? So again, going by the same frameworks, what it really means is a commitment to inclusivity, which really ensures that you're going to be hearing the concerns of stakeholders. It means that somewhere your processes are going to involve all stakeholder groups at various levels, at various stages, but they are going to be inclusive of the kind of concerns and issues that the stakeholder groups raise. So when we look at stakeholder engagement, it is something which has evolved over the course of years. We can trace it clearly to 3 generations. So the first era was clearly the awareness era, wherein it was something which was pressure driven. You know, there was something going wrong with the organization, some negative factor that happened which suddenly triggered or compelled companies to start looking at engaging with stakeholders. As we moved forward, we find that there were certain systematic risk engagement practices that, you know, now how do we ensure that we don't really get into a mess or we don't get into an unwanted situation. So let's start taking certain sort of risk mitigation measures. And the third era is really the engagement era, which is what we are kind of talking about now, wherein stakeholder engagement is actually embedded within your organization's strategic goals. So it is not seen as something which is a peripheral activity, but rather as a strategic initiative which is going to yield a lot of results for the company. If I have to represent the 3 stages in a more sort of a diagrammatic manner, or in a sort of a, just to give you clear-cut words which will help you understand. So we are moving from a situation of being reactive to then moving towards a more proactive approach, towards the last stage, which is really interactive. You are interacting with your stakeholder groups at every level. You are involving them at every stage of your engagement. When we look at stakeholder engagement, there are various frameworks and models that are acceptable. The most commonly used, as I pointed out earlier, is the accountability SES framework. And it lays down 3 principles around which stakeholder engagement practices should be driven. Those 3 principles are materiality, which is by materiality what they mean is what is important to an organization as well as to your stakeholder groups. So it is not something which is only important to me as an organization, but also to my stakeholders. So that issue is material to the organization. The other is in terms of completeness. How complete are you in terms of involving your stakeholder groups? Is it that your engagement practices are tinted or sort of driven towards only 1 or 2 specific stakeholder groups? Or is it that it's actually broadly encompassing all the stakeholder groups? So that's the principle of completeness. And the third is the principle of responsiveness. How well do you respond to your stakeholders? Are you really listening to what are the kind of needs that they are pointing out? Are you listening to the kind of concerns and issues that they are raising? In 2011, the standard has undergone a bit of revision, and now we see that the principle of completeness has been done away with, and instead inclusivity has become the third guiding principle. So what they say is, while completeness, you necessarily have to involve all your stakeholder groups, what is more important is how well do you include them? How well do you incorporate their concerns? So the now 3 guiding principles for stakeholder engagement are materiality, inclusiveness, and responsiveness. So if we are to typically look at who are the kind of business stakeholders for any organization operating in today's scenario, these would be the typical groups that would emerge. You have suppliers, you have your employees, you would have the owners as well as shareholders, you would have the consumers to whom you are selling your products, you would have the community in the areas where you're operating, And of course, we have the government, with whom we are often, engaging at a more sort of a regular basis in terms of various documents and things that we have to submit. So what we see is that in addition to these traditional stakeholders, now there is an increasingly sort of emerging group which comes along on who are the new stakeholders. And suddenly we find stakeholder groups such as civil society or various focused NGOs now becoming more important. We've already seen the kind of experiences that organizations have had both within the country as well as globally in terms of the backlashes that have happened because of an NGO protesting against them. Similarly, we've often heard of environment as now emerging as a new stakeholder group. Companies now taking more and more active sort of measures to address issues around the environment and to ensure that they are really not harming the environment. We have competitors now who are now being more actively engaged while looking at. So we see a lot of companies now coming together with their competitors to, lobby or maybe advocate around a particular issue, which was earlier completely unthought of. So having said all of that, we've seen stakeholder engagement in terms of definitions and all. The first question that a company is going to ask, what's in it for me? So that's the WIFM's part of it. Why should a company engage? And I'll just walk you through 2-3 examples which clearly demonstrate the case of why companies should engage with their stakeholders. We've all seen what happened with Tata Motors at Singur in terms of the kind of backlashes they've had. But we see a similar company in the same area of Bengal, which is Jindal's, doing extremely well because of the land acquisition practices. So while Tata left the land acquisition only to the government, what Jindal's did was that while majority of it had to be acquired from the government, they also acquired a certain portion of it from the community. And while doing that, they actually combined two components, which is cash as well as equity. So not only did they offer the cash equivalent for the land that they bought, but they also offered a job per family, which sort of, sustained and ensured the families that they had a sustenance for long term. So that really made the Jindals very successful in the same region of West Bengal, where we clearly know Tata Motors completely failed. In a similar case, we find that Wipro as a company was hauled up for its e-waste by the organization called Greenpeace, which we are all familiar with. And Greenpeace in early 2006 actually dumped all the e-waste that Wipro generated outside their corporate office, saying that this is your mess and you please deal with it. And Wipro on its part actually, could have just completely ignored it or dealt with the issue at that moment and then be done with it. But what we find is Wipro starts taking more cognizance of such issues and starts proactively engaging with such issues. And today Wipro is not only of course dealing with the kind of e-waste that it generates, but is also the leading company when it comes to e-waste regulations in India. So that's the kind of proactive engagement that we are talking about, that while you deal with various crisis situations, how you make sure that you engage with various stakeholder groups to ensure that these crises do not emerge again. So those are the kind of practices. Nike is often one of the most classic cases which is cited when it comes to stakeholder engagement practices. It was somewhere early in the 1990s, maybe early 90s, wherein Nike was actually hauled up on account of its factory working conditions, on account of practicing child labor and various such sort of oppressive practices. And Nike again, earlier its response was that, we will not deal with this, and they started talking to a few organizations. They set up a corporate responsibility department within their organization who was made responsible to look at these things. But, they gradually found that they will have to look at more proactive measures rather than just setting up one department to look after this. And today Nike is again one of the major organizations leading labor initiatives. It is a part of all international arrangements supporting and advocating for fair labor conditions. And practices such as these can actually hit your market very bad, because there was a time when people started saying that we are not going to buy Nike products anymore. So coming from a situation to that, to actually being termed as one of the most responsible organizations around supporting or preventing child labor from happening, was the kind of transition that Nike has made. So clearly we do see, what is it for the company, what is in it for the company to actually start engaging with their stakeholder groups. While we talk about things like this, there are certain drivers which push companies to do or sort of start engaging with their stakeholders on a more proactive basis. The first and really the most visible of these is in terms of emergence of new legislations and standards. So as we've all seen with the National Voluntary Guidelines now coming into picture, which were earlier the CSR guidelines, now companies are more proactively looking at CSR. They need to do activities around these. And they are now trying to understand how best they can work with various stakeholder groups to look at their CSR agendas. So as we can see, many a times it is legislation that drives companies to start looking at stakeholder engagement. Many a times what also happens is there is a lot of public scrutiny that a company is subjected to. We all know what happened with the case of Vedanta, and today in its operations in Odisha, and the kind of backlash that it has had with various NGOs also talking so negatively about the organization, a couple of investors also withdrawing. But today we find that Vedanta is actually embarking upon a very comprehensive strategies and is at a global level looking at defining its stakeholder engagement plans and sort of making sure that all the stakeholders are on board. So now they're looking at actively engaging with all the tribal and indigenous groups who are involved, as well as speaking to the NGOs and various other stakeholder groups. Also, we find that many a times organizations start undertaking practices because there are certain critical events that have happened. So as we had seen in India, the Bhopal gas tragedy, as we're all familiar with the kind of repercussions it had, it was after that, as well as a couple of such similar accidents in the US, in Texas, that we find an entire international initiative called the Responsible Care being formed. And this was led by the chemicals industry, and what the initiative is aimed at doing is to actually ensure and spread the kind of awareness to ensure that such incidents do not happen again, and if at all they do, what are the kind of disaster preparedness or mitigation measures that would be required. So these are some of the kind of drivers that we look at while talking about stakeholder engagement. And now this will become all the more prominent for companies with the National Voluntary Guidelines actually talking about having a specific principle talking about stakeholder engagement. So this is the principle 4 as outlined in the NVGs, which clearly says that the businesses should respect the interests of as well as be responsive towards all stakeholder groups, especially those who are disadvantaged, vulnerable and marginalized. And with the SEBI guidelines now saying that the companies, top 100 companies would have to report on the NVGs, it is sort of a voluntary, legal, whatever you might want to call it, that sort of a push wherein companies would actually have to start looking at their stakeholders and do a sort of more proactive engagement on how they can best work with the stakeholder groups. So I'll walk you through the next part of the presentation, which is really the stakeholder engagement process per se. So now that we've clearly seen there are business benefits to stakeholder engagement, how do I start engaging with my stakeholder groups? So the process is actually divided into 8 stages, which can be broadly categorized into 3 stages. The ones that you see in white is really the thinking and planning part of this process, wherein you're sort of identifying your stakeholder groups, trying to understand what are the objectives of engagement, prioritizing and seeing what are the issues to engage. The next part of it, which you see is in the text is in black, is really the actually executing part of it, in terms of now that you've decided and you've planned your engagement, how do you take it forward? And the last part is how do you review and report back to your stakeholders, because at every moment that is extremely important to keep involving your stakeholders and also to keep them informed on what is happening. So just to kind of talk about the first stage, which I said was really thinking and planning, some of the key steps involved over here would be stakeholder mapping, wherein you come up with a laundry list of who could be your potential stakeholder groups, and then move on to defining objectives of engaging with each of them. So if I say a supplier, I need to clearly understand what are going to be my objectives of engaging with that group of suppliers. And the next thing, which is really the most important part over here, is the identification of material issues as well as prioritizing these issues. For materiality, this is a most commonly used materiality matrix. It's called the materiality test, which the accountability standards suggest. And they say that when an organization is trying to identify its material issues, they would clearly have to look at two sort of issues. Those issues which will be mission and policy driven from the point of view of the organization. So those would be any issue which has a financial impact, any issue which has your organization might have a policy around it, so obviously that's a material issue to the organization. And also in terms of peer-based norms, what are your competitors doing, what are the peers in the industry doing, you would also not want to lag behind, so therefore that also becomes a material issue. And the other side that you see is really issues that would emanate from stakeholders. So what is it that your stakeholders are voicing as being important issues, or they feel that you being an organization should look at these issues? And the second part of it would be really in terms of societal norms. So if today the society feels that all organizations should have programs around climate change, we would find that if most of the companies will actually start working around it, and also when they have immediate financial impacts, they would have the two combined and also look at these issues in a more sort of aggressive manner. These things, one, I would really want to make a point here that when we look at materiality, we find that this categorization in terms of the mission and driven policy as well as the societal issues, they seem to keep changing again and again. So one issue which is a societal norm today may actually become a policy-based sort of a performance measure tomorrow. So biodiversity, for instance, is an issue which is not so much important today to a lot of companies, but maybe in course of times, if we, let's see in terms of what happens at the COP on biodiversity, if there are some multilateral agreements that are reached in terms of any government initiatives, it might actually get onto the stage of being a policy-based sort of a measure wherein companies would want to look at that issue more strategically. So, as I said, these things keep changing. Just to give you an example in terms of how companies often do a materiality in terms of plotting and identifying issues, again, just an example from Wipro. So, as I had pointed out right at the beginning, an issue is material when it is important to both your business as well as your stakeholder groups. So as we see on the y-axis, we've plotted what is relevant to the business, and on the x-axis, we have what is important to the stakeholder groups. And clearly for Wipro as an organization, which is one of the leading service providers as well as products in terms of IT equipment, clearly the first thing that comes out in terms of being of significant or paramount importance is product and service quality. The other issues which gain a lot of importance for Wipro as an organization were climate change, resource efficiency, how well do they make use of their resources. And the issues which are relatively of lower importance are issues around biodiversity. So that's the kind of materiality mapping that companies do, and this is something which is very commonly done across not just India but globally as well in terms of identifying the material issues. Companies tend to do this for every stakeholder group as well, and then sort of combine all of them together to come at a more of an organizational level. So yes, it is a time-consuming exercise, but it will really enable an organization to understand what really is the material issue for the stakeholder groups. The other part of the process is wherein you're actually looking at what is it that is already there within the organization. How are you, currently engaging with stakeholder groups? Are there any areas of capacity building that may be required? And capacity building could be required both at your end, maybe as an organization, or at the end of stakeholder groups. So for instance, we find that when ONGC decided to embark upon an environment program, it realized that its own in-house teams did not have the capacity around it, and they therefore started on with rigorous training programs to actually take this sort of initiative forward. Similarly, we find that many a times when companies are actually engaging with stakeholder groups, the external stakeholders like communities, you might find that you want to go and talk about a program, but that doesn't gel too well with the community. So you might have to look at them. We all know what happened with McDonald's when they came to India and they started to sell beef products. We know the kind of backlash that happened. So that was clearly a case wherein you did not assess the kind of requirements of your community, and therefore your product failed. But today we find when they are trying to customize their products and to make them more Indianized, you see the kind of success that McDonald's has had. So that is what we're talking about when it comes to engaging with your stakeholders, actually identifying the areas of capacity in terms of both your organization and stakeholders, and based on that then actually design the stakeholder engagement plan. And the last part of it is in terms of reviewing and reporting. So of course the basic purpose of review and report is to actually understand where, what are the success factors, where are the areas where the organization has not done so well, how do you kind of ensure that these things do not happen, do you need to redefine your stakeholder objectives, are there areas where you are lacking. So all of those kind of things come handy when it comes to reviewing and reporting. Very clearly, why do we need to review and measure? It helps in better relations with a range of stakeholder groups, not just better community relations. We might also forge a lot of new partnerships as we talk to our stakeholder groups, and therefore that's extremely important in terms of looking at a long-term vision from the point of view of the organization. It of course helps in terms of building in an employee satisfaction, because the employees also feel involved and they feel that they are a part of an organization who's responsive enough towards taking note of the stakeholder needs. It may many times actually come up with new business opportunities as well, because these are areas which you might have not thought of earlier, but as you start talking to various stakeholder groups, there are new areas of partnerships and collaborations that emerge. So just to summarize my entire presentation, clearly stakeholder engagement has never been something optional. It is something that companies have been doing for years, just that they've never used the term stakeholder engagement. But the idea is to how best can we do that to get the most optimum results out of the process. As we see, the drivers and context for engagement are continually changing. We see new legislations coming in every now and then. We see a lot of new stakeholder groups emerging every now and then. So how dynamic are we as an organization to actually take note of these sort of changing dynamics and incorporate those in our strategies? Clearly, stakeholder engagement is no longer a sort of a risk mitigation strategy, but is now being looked upon as something which can enable organizations in terms of taking a more of a transformative leap, as well as in terms of building mutually acceptable as well as win-win relations. And clearly, good stakeholder engagement is something which is very proactive as well as interactive. It is not something wherein you will be waiting for a crisis to emerge and then look at engaging with stakeholder groups, but rather you would proactively act to make sure that there is no crisis that happens. So just to again kind of highlight, the next stakeholder engagement training program is scheduled on the 27th of September in Bhubaneswar. And in case you need any more details around that or any other details, feel free to reach me at the coordinates given on the slide. And now I guess we would open the floor for questions and comments.
Yeah. They would try. I believe that was very comprehensive, so that no one was asking me questions.
So should I start answering questions? Okay, just for the knowledge of everyone else as well, there's a question around how HR can play a role in stakeholder engagement. HR is actually one of the most strategic players when it comes to looking at stakeholder engagement, and especially so when it comes to internal stakeholder engagement for an organization. Because how an organization communicates with its internal stakeholders is often routed through the HR. So how does an organization, for instance, communicate with its employees? What are the sort of engagement plans that you come out? The role that HR plays here is in terms of designing programs that enable the employees to feel motivated enough to feel that yes, they are, as an being a member of the organization, they are being heard and they are actually being given value in terms of their opinion and their views matter. So what we've seen in terms of the kind of organizational experiences, we've actually seen HR coming out with employee engagement plans, wherein they chart out various activities for the entire year that they are going to be doing out. And they have circulars, they have through the internal websites, the intranet and other forums that they keep bringing out various sort of newsletters, contests, any other activities, as well as policy decisions to keep telling employees what is happening within the organization, any award that the organization wins, to actually ensure and inform the rest of the employees that yes, this is what the organization has done. So from that point of view, HR plays a very important role. For the external stakeholders, the kind of role that HR would have depends, because we've not seen HR playing a very active role in a lot of external stakeholder engagement practices, but in certain organizations, HR is also one of the committee members of the committee which defines plans around community engagement, for instance. So that would depend upon the kind of role that is assigned to HR. But clearly for internal stakeholders such as employees, that's the most important forum for looking at stakeholder engagement. Actually, when we look at Indian organizations, we find that stakeholder engagement is not something which is very difficult for them to buy or sort of get that buy-in, because as I was mentioning earlier, many a times we find, and this is I think one of the problems that often is kind of attributed to Indian businesses, that the moment you say stakeholder engagement, they see it as CSR or they see it as community relations, which is not true. When we look at stakeholder engagement, you are looking at engaging with every stakeholder group. So your suppliers, for instance, is one of the most important stakeholder group, and how you engage with them is also very important, as is also important with community. So in terms of businesses, yes, we do find that the moment you say stakeholder engagement, they typecast it to CSR. But as I said, now there is a lot of growing awareness around this, that yes, it is not something which is restricted to only these functions. I could give you an example of an automotive company that we had looked at, and it was just a case of stakeholder engagement again, wherein one of their suppliers, for instance, actually had some problem and was served a shutdown notice. And this was one supplier, but and this was in the case of automotives, how it works, because all these products are based on heavy inventory lines, and a delay in even one component can actually result in production delays for the whole automotive company. So what happened in their case was they had the choice to just actually leave the supplier out, or but what they actually started doing was they started this entire program of greening their supply chain, and they ensured that all these suppliers were in line with the consent conditions of what was required and expected out of them, and also in terms of doing environmental audits, understanding what were the kind of gap areas, where was capacity building required, and actually pitching in over there, getting in the best experts available to do that sort of thing, and also hand-holding these suppliers to take these programs forward. So clearly, stakeholder engagement is not something which is confined to only CSR, but is rather very important to the organization as a whole and for every particular stakeholder group.
As we're seeing that there seem to be no more actual inquiries, I would like to thank Mr. Shagufta Kamran for a very comprehensive presentation on the topic and engaging us in a very informative manner. Now, I would like to inform. I think we are having one more question, Mr. Ravindra. Okay, let's wait for it.
When we look at stakeholder engagement for the SME segment, it is equally important as would be the case for large organizations. But what we've seen in terms of, and this I say out of experience in terms of looking at various stakeholder engagement experiences of the SME sector as well, what we've seen is what works best with the small and medium enterprises is to actually look at engagement in more sort of a cluster model, because the organizations in themselves are too small to actually even advocate for their interests or to sort of represent themselves. So what we've seen is the SMEs prefer to actually go in as per the cluster model, wherein, and this is usually done in a geographic sort of a model, wherein all the SMEs operating in a particular geographical location come together as one cluster and then would want to represent themselves. That model in itself has a lot of advantages, because one, it gives you a collective voice to actually sort of raise your opinion and also echo the kind of concerns and issues that you might have. In terms of various departments and governments and things like that, if they are to lobby or if they are to look at various subsidy programs and things like that, that again helps when you come together as a collective as against one single small entity, which in itself might have limitations. So clearly, when we look at SMEs, it is really the cluster model that seems to work for stakeholder engagement.
There was a question from Mr. Ravindran. You're waiting for it? Okay, Mr. Ravindran seems to have changed his mind about asking a question. I would like to inform all the participants as well as the registrants here that the entire proceedings, will be being recorded. The presentation as well as the video will be uploaded into the knowledge management module of mycai.in. We will revert back to all the registrants about its availability and about and how can it be accessed.